Who's going to lose in week 9 that shouldn't have gotten beaten? Because the programs we are about to discuss might be thinking about their next upcoming opponent instead of what is in front of them for this weekend. In the wide open Big 12, BYU faces Iowa State in Ames. Another one to preview in Baton Rouge. LSU hosts the Texas A&M Aggies. And South Carolina welcomes the Alabama Crimson Tide for another SEC scrap. Let's dive into the beginning of the back half of the 2025 college football season. Game 1, we head to Ames for BYU versus Iowa State. The Cyclones have claimed victory every time in this series going back to 1968. For 2025, we should have a different quarterback combo, as BYU, at the time of writing this in the offseason, has probably lost Jake Retzlaff to an off-the-field issue and doesn't look like he will be playing for the away team. We'll leave that there and try to talk about his replacements, McKay Hilstead or Tresson Bourguet. If I was making the decisions for the Cougs, I would plug in Bourguet. He has a history of protecting the ball and has some decent numbers for just 8 games. In those appearances, he only threw 2 interceptions. Hilstead is the option that will be taking the most risk, which fits this big play offense. I don't think the newcomer from the portal, Bear Bockenmeyer, will be getting the starting job, because I expect him to get more plays that are designed to utilize his running abilities. This should compensate for the loss of Retzlaff's rushing yards and touchdowns on the ground. The quarterback for BYU will have the Cougs' top target back, Chase Roberts. His route running was excellent last year and helped out BYU move the chains. Honestly, he might get numbers that put him on the all Big 12 first team, but maybe those efforts will make him an All-American. On the other side of the ball, BYU's defense will have the most experience coming back in the outside linebacker positions. Jack Kelly, who started in all 13 games for the Cougars, and Isaiah Glasker, who only started in 9 games but was the top tackler for the defense in 2024. Siale Acera will play in the middle of them. Acera was a former 4-star recruit out of high school. The home team in this game, Iowa State, will like their chances in the trenches, as the Cyclones have 5 expected offensive line starters that played most of last season back. Brendan Black at right guard. Black started in 13 games. Tyler Miller at right tackle. Miller started all 14 games. Dylan Barrett, who is switching to center and started 9 at right guard before getting hurt. Trevor Bohr at left guard. Bohr started in 6 games. And at left tackle, James Neal III, who played in 6 at guard and tackle. A lot of experience coming back in the trenches. This should be one of the keys in getting the Cyclones back to another Big 12 championship game. Along with the Hogs returning, a pair of running backs come back too, Carson Hansen and Abul Sama. The two rushed for over 1,300 yards and combined for 15 touchdowns. These two departments should keep some of the pressure off of quarterback Oroko Beck's back. For the Iowa State defense, linebacker Cooper Ebel and defensive back Jeremiah Cooper are 2 of the 4 Cyclone defenders back for 2025. We'll see if the secondary can keep their 2024 pass defense form, as they were ranked 3rd in the nation. So, if Iowa State can continue their no-fly zone to prevent BYU from hitting big plays, the Cyclones will stay undefeated against the Cougs. But if Iowa State can stop the big plays or the BYU running game, which should be a bigger feature this season, then the Provo Cougs will get their first ever win over the Cyclones. The results from this game is going to be a massive deal on who competes in Arlington for a Big 12 title. Game 2 for Week 9, we are in Baton Rouge again for Texas A&M versus LSU. This is the 64th time these two have met on the gridiron, and the matchup goes back to 1899. The last 6 between these SEC programs has been split, with the home team winning each of those games. In the last 6 meetings, the closest score lines were in Baton Rouge, so we might see a tight game and some entertaining late October football. Starting with the home squad, the LSU Tigers, who we've now covered in 4 previous weeks for the 2025 season, and we'll have another game to talk about after this one. But for this bout for LSU, against a program that has gotten the best of them at times, are going to have a tough test with the Aggies, even at home. The game last season We saw A&M dominate on the ground, rushing for more than 100 yards of what the average LSU run defense gave up in 2024. And I expect that the Aggies do a bit of the same in 2025, not just because the tools they have on their own offense, but because it keeps Garrett Nussmeier and the LSU O off the field, killing the clock and making every drive for the Tigers truly matter, especially when you look at what the last encounter tells us on paper. 8 of the 14 LSU possessions didn't go past 5 plays, with punts, turnovers, and missed points. We have mentioned this problem not just in our previews for 2025, but going back to last season after doing watch-alongs for the USC game in Las Vegas and the slaughter in Death Valley against Alabama. The Tigers need to, again, be efficient when airing it out, because it won't matter if you have over 400 yards passing the ball, which LSU did in their loss to the Aggies in 2024. You need long sustaining drives, specifically when you are up against a run-heavy team like Texas A&M. Regardless of your feelings about LSU and the past records in defending home turf, this is just a mismatch that doesn't favor the Tigers. Plus, you have good old Brian Kelly in charge. Again, LSU needs to proficiently air out the ball and contain the run. Now to the away team, Texas A&M, who we haven't talked about since their game on the road in South Bend against Notre Dame. For this one in Baton Rouge, their secondary is the most important group, like in 2024. You would think, since I'm more of a trenches guy, that my suggestion would be to put pressure in the LSU pocket. But no, that's not going to be a thing, because A&M's defensive line didn't have to bring Nussmeier down as much as you think, only registering 2 sacks for the 2024 game, which is why I'm steering away from a pressure approach and have come to a simple conclusion. A&M's DBs. They will be key in stopping this LSU pass attack and keeping it in front of them, just like last year, with shadow man-to-man coverage, breaking to the ball in zone, and deflecting the football when possible. The Aggie defense had 5 passes defended last time, with 3 out of the 11 expected starters each recording 1. One of those came from a stud in the front 6. If they can continue this for 2025, Texas A&M might get a win in Death Valley for the first time since 1994. But they also have to dominate on the ground when in possession, because the more time taken up, the more desperate LSU will get with their play calls and the risks taken in those plays. So, will we have the same as what we saw in 2024 for 2025 between LSU and Texas A&M? Or will we see the Tigers pitch a close to perfect game, as this bout, just like most we have previewed, is going to have an impact on the upcoming college football playoffs? Honorable mentions for Week 9 begins with an ACC clash between Boston College and Louisville. Can Bill O'Brien get the Eagles a win in Sluggerville for the first time since 2017? For the 123rd time, the Sunflower Showdown. Kansas State versus the Jayhawks, breaking new ground in the newly renovated David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium. Next is at the Palace on the Prairie. Oklahoma will defend their home turf and try and get their first ever win over the Ole Miss Rebels. And the last one is between 2 second-year head coaches for the Paul Bunyan Trophy, as the Michigan Wolverines head to East Lansing to battle Michigan State. The final game for Week 9 is still in the SEC, as we head over to Columbia, South Carolina. The Gamecocks host the Alabama Crimson Tide. Last year, this matchup ended with some fireworks, with South Carolina losing their second half lead. Then the Gamecocks came up with a scoring drive that put the game within less than a field goal. South Carolina then recovered an onside kick, but this unfortunately wasn't followed by a game-winning drive, as Lenore Sellers threw an interception in the final seconds. Sorry for reminding you South Carolina fans, but that game had one of the most exciting endings for the 2024 season. We expect a similar kind of bout between the two, because the Gamecocks love a bit of a scrap when they come up against the Tide. Let's start with South Carolina, whose biggest gamble for this 2025 campaign is their new defensive lineman coming through the portal, particularly at the tackle positions. who will have to try and replicate the 76 tackles from that 2024 unit. These guys are going to be crucial, as at this point in the season, Alabama will be a well-established passing juggernaut and will mix in some clever run plays that are going to expose any pass rush calls. Those defensive tackles will be key in reading and shredding to the Alabama ball carrier. We'll also see if the Gamecocks' pressure on the QB can cause ends to drives or turnovers, like it did in last year's encounter. Switching to the South Carolina offense, they need to protect the ball. Sellers gave up 2 fumbles just on his own, plus another Gamecock fumble on the Alabama side of the field. That drive could have been the difference with just a field goal. Their strategy last season on offense could probably get them close again, especially with Sellers dumping the ball off to the running backs. The Gamecocks gained some crucial first downs, which led to some points. Gotta have a bit of the same, even if Bama expects it. For the away team, we haven't discussed since week 5 for their game against Georgia, come into 2025 with one of the best defensive lines in all of college football. LT Overton is back, also returning Tim Keenum III. James Smith is stepping up this season, and Quay Rashaw is back. We also have to mention Jamarian Latham, who brings in some tremendous depth in the defensive front. If these big boys for the Tide can stuff the run and keep Sellers quiet on the ground, I like their chances for this big game on the road. The Alabama offense might be a bit different this time around, with the involvement and production from the tight ends. Maybe not by much, but will be a factor when it matters, as Josh Cuevas returns for the Crimson Tide and actually came in with the board last season. We'll also see some transfers, a couple of 4-star recruits, and guys already on campus contribute for Alabama in the passing game at tight end. Again, I expect when South Carolina casts a blanket, one of these tight ends should break the coverage for a first down or big play. So, who will win this one in Columbia? Well, the team that doesn't turn the ball over and plays to their strengths and weaknesses, as this SEC playoff game, just like the one before, will have an effect on who is participating in the postseason and who is watching it at home. Okay, we'll see you guys again for some more week-by-week previews for the 2025 college football season, and bye-bye for now from the couch.